The world of Hollywood is in absolute shock right now after the sudden and brutal loss of one of its most famous couples. Rob Reiner, the man who gave us movies like The Princess Bride and Stand By Me, was found dead in his home this week alongside his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner. They were not just famous faces, but a power couple who had been married for over 35 years. The news broke late on Sunday, December 14th, 2025, and it instantly sent waves of sadness across the country. But as the police and medical examiners began their work, a much darker picture started to emerge. We are not just looking at a tragedy, but a crime scene that tells a horrific story of betrayal. The official reports are now coming out, and they reveal details that are hard to even listen to. We are talking about sharp force injuries, a family member in handcuffs, and a home that was supposed to be a safe haven turning into a nightmare. Everyone thought they were the perfect, happy family, but the police reports and court documents released in the last few days paint a very different picture. But before we get into the full timeline of this heartbreaking event, there is one specific detail that has left investigators and friends completely stunned. It is something that happened just hours before the bodies were found, a hidden twist that no one saw coming. It involves a holiday party at another famous celebrity's house and a public argument that might have been the final warning sign. When you hear who was involved and what was said, it changes everything you think you know about this case. This missing piece of the puzzle explains why things spiraled out of control so fast, and we are going to get to that shocking revelation in just a moment. To understand how this happened, we have to go back to the afternoon of Sunday, December 14th. It was a quiet day in the upscale neighborhood of Brentwood in Los Angeles. This is a place where huge gates hide massive mansions, and celebrities live quiet lives away from the cameras. Rob and Michelle Reiner lived there for years. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, their daughter Romy went to the house to check on her parents. She had no idea that she was walking into a crime scene. According to the police reports released this week, Romy found her father in the master bedroom. He was not moving. The sights and sounds of that moment are too terrible to fully describe, but we know she panicked. She was so terrified by what she saw that she did not even search the rest of the house. She ran out the front door and fled across the street to a neighbor's house. She didn't even know at that moment that her mother, Michelle, was also inside the house, lying dead in another room. The 911 call came in at 3:38 p.m. Paramedics from the Los Angeles Fire Department rushed to the scene thinking it might be a medical emergency like a heart attack. But when they walked into that bedroom, they immediately knew this was not natural. They found a man and a woman, both with terrible injuries. The police were called instantly. By the time the sun went down on Sunday, the news helicopters were circling overhead, and yellow crime scene tapes surrounded the beautiful home where Rob and Michelle had raised their 3 children. The first of the 7 disturbing details comes from the initial medical examiner's report that was released just a few days ago, on December 17th. The report confirms that both Rob and Michelle died from multiple sharp force injuries. In simple terms, they were stabbed. This was not a quick or peaceful end. The phrase multiple sharp force injuries suggests a violent attack, something personal and angry. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a robbery gone wrong where a stranger panicked. This brings us to the second disturbing detail found in the police investigation report. There was absolutely no sign of forced entry. No broken windows, no smashed doors, no picked locks. The person who did this walked right in or was already inside. This detail is what immediately turned the police's attention toward the family. It meant the killer likely had a key or was let in by the victims. That fact alone makes this story so much more heartbreaking because it implies the danger came from someone they loved and trusted. By Sunday night, the police had launched a massive manhunt. They weren't looking for a random stranger. They were looking for the couple's 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner. This leads us to the third disturbing detail, which is Nick's history. For years, the Reiner family had been open about their struggles. Nick had battled drug addiction since he was a teenager. Rob Reiner even made a movie called Being Charlie in 2015, which was based on Nick's life. They wrote the movie together. It was supposed to be a story of healing and understanding. Rob had spoken many times about how hard they fought to save their son from drugs. He said they had been through rehab with him 18 times. 18 times they tried to help him get clean. They never gave up on him. But despite all that love and all those resources, the demons apparently came back. Police tracked Nick down that same Sunday evening. He wasn't at the house. He had traveled about 15 miles away to an area near the University of Southern California in South Los Angeles. He was arrested there without a fight. The fact that he left the scene and traveled so far while his parents lay dead in their home adds a chilling layer to the timeline. Now, remember that cliffhanger about the holiday party? This is the fourth and perhaps most shocking detail that has come out in the last few days. Reports from family friends reveal that on Saturday night, the very night before the murders, Rob and Nick were together at a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien. This was a high-profile event with many famous people. Witnesses say that Rob and Nick got into a heated argument at the party. People noticed Nick acting strangely. It wasn't just a small disagreement, it was tense enough that people remembered it the next day. This argument might have been the spark that lit the fuse. It suggests that the anger was building up hours before the violence happened. It wasn't a random snap in the middle of the night. The tension had been brewing in front of witnesses. To think that they were out at a holiday party, surrounded by friends and laughter, just hours before such a tragedy is truly haunting. It makes you wonder if anyone could have intervened if they knew how bad things were. The legal process started moving very fast this week. On Tuesday, December 16th, the Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman officially charged Nick Reiner with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But there was a twist. Nick didn't show up to court right away. This is our 5th disturbing detail. The report stated that Nick was not medically cleared to appear in court on Tuesday. This usually means there is a health issue, either physical or mental, that is so severe the person cannot stand before a judge. We don't know the exact medical reason, but it hints that Nick was not in a stable state when he was arrested. When he finally did appear in court on Wednesday, December 17th, the scene was even more unsettling. He walked in wearing a special blue vest. This wasn't a normal jail uniform, it was a suicide prevention vest, also known as a safety smock or turtle suit. This is the 6th disturbing detail. The authorities clearly believe he is a danger to himself. He was shackled and hidden from the public view behind a glass partition. He didn't say much, only answering, "Yes, Your Honor," when the judge asked if he understood his rights. His lawyer, Alan Jackson, who is very famous and has represented other big celebrities, stood by his side. The sight of the son of a Hollywood legend standing in a suicide vest, accused of killing the parents who tried so hard to save him, is an image that has shaken everyone who saw it. The 7th disturbing detail is the sheer brutality implied by the charges. The district attorney didn't just charge him with murder. They added a special circumstance allegation for multiple murders. In California law, this is a very big deal. It means that if he is convicted, he could face life in prison without the possibility of parole or even the death penalty, although the death penalty is currently on hold in the state. The prosecutors also added an allegation that he used a dangerous and deadly weapon, specifically a knife. The fact that it was a knife attack on 2 people suggests a level of rage and intimacy that is hard to comprehend. Guns are quick and distant, but a knife requires being close to the victim. It is personal. The autopsy report confirming the multiple wounds aligns with this charge. It paints a picture of a violent struggle in the early morning hours, a time when Rob and Michelle should have been safe in their beds. While all these dark details were coming out, the world was also mourning the loss of Michelle Singer Reiner. She wasn't just Rob's wife, she was a talented photographer and a strong woman in her own right. She was 70 years old. She met Rob on the set of his famous movie, When Harry Met Sally. In fact, she is the reason that movie has a happy ending. Originally, Harry and Sally weren't going to end up together. But then Rob met Michelle, and he fell so deeply in love that he changed the script. He wanted the characters to be happy because he was happy. They married in 1989 and built a life that seemed like a fairy tale. Michelle was also a producer and an activist. She fought for environmental causes and children's rights. She was the glue that held the family together. Her friends described her as the balabusta, a Yiddish word for a perfect homemaker and a strong woman who runs the show. For her life to end in such a violent way, inside her own home, is a tragedy that her friends cannot wrap their heads around. The reaction from Hollywood has been overwhelming. Stars like Billy Crystal, who starred in When Harry Met Sally, are devastated. Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Hanks, and so many others have posted tributes. They aren't just mourning a director, they are mourning their friends. They remember the dinner parties, the laughter, and the activism. Rob Reiner was very active in politics. He was a loud voice against Donald Trump and often posted on social media about his views. This brings us to a controversial moment that happened this week. After the news broke, Donald Trump posted a statement on his social media platform, Truth Social. He called Rob Reiner a tortured and struggling filmmaker and claimed that he died because of Trump derangement syndrome. This comment caused a huge backlash. Many people felt it was incredibly disrespectful to use a tragic murder for a political attack, especially when the bodies had just been found. Rob's friends, and even some politicians, called it heartless. It added a layer of anger to the grief that everyone was already feeling. It showed how divided the world is, that even in death, politics couldn't be put aside for just 1 week. But we must focus back on the family that is left behind. Rob and Michelle have 2 other children, Jake and Romy. Romy is the one who found her father. Imagine the trauma she is living through right now. She went to check on her parents and found her world destroyed. Jake is a journalist. Together, they released a heartbreaking statement on Wednesday. They said, "Words cannot even begin to describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing." They called their parents their best friends. That phrase is so powerful. It shows that despite the troubles with Nick, this was a close-knit family. They loved each other deeply. They asked for privacy and compassion, not just for them, but for their brother Nick as well. That is a stunning act of grace. Even though Nick is accused of doing this terrible thing, he is still their brother. They know his history of mental illness and addiction better than anyone. They are grieving their parents, and in a way, they have lost their brother too. It is a complicated, messy, and painful situation that no family should ever have to go through. The investigation is still ongoing. The police are still looking at evidence from the house. They are looking at phone records, text messages, and security camera footage from the neighborhood. They want to build a complete timeline of what happened between the party on Saturday night and the discovery on Sunday afternoon. The final report from the medical examiner will take months to be fully completed with toxicology results, but the preliminary findings we have discussed, the sharp force injuries and the manner of death being homicide, are enough to confirm the horror of what happened. The police have sealed the house, and it remains a crime scene. Flowers and candles are piling up outside the gate, and on Rob Reiner's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Fans are leaving notes thanking him for the movies that defined their childhoods. Let's look deeper at the timeline of the arrest, because it reveals how efficient the police work was. When Romy found the body and the 911 call was made, the police didn't know where Nick was. They had to use technology to track him. In 2025, it is very hard to disappear. They likely used his cell phone signal or license plate readers to find him near USC. The area where he was found is very different from Brentwood. It's a busy urban part of Los Angeles. Was he trying to hide? Was he trying to score drugs? Or was he just wandering in a daze? We don't know yet. But the fact that he was taken in without incident means he didn't fight back. He surrendered. This might play a big role in his defense later. His lawyer, Alan Jackson, is known for being aggressive and smart. He will likely look at Nick's mental health history. If Nick was having a psychotic break or was under the influence of heavy drugs, the defense might argue that he didn't have the intent required for first-degree murder. They might argue for a lesser charge or an insanity plea. The suicide vest detail supports the idea that he is mentally unstable right now. The court case is scheduled to continue on January 7, 2026, which is just a few weeks away. That is when Nick will have to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. Until then, he is sitting in a jail cell, held without bail. We also need to talk about the legacy of Rob Reiner's work because it makes this loss feel personal to millions of people. He created The Princess Bride, a movie about true love conquering all. He created Stand By Me, a movie about the bonds of childhood friendship. He played Meathead on All in the Family, a show that taught America how to argue about politics, but still love each other. His work was always about humanity, connection, and heart. That is why this ending is so cruel. A man who spent his life telling stories about love and friendship died in a violent act of betrayal. It feels like a dark twist that belongs in a horror movie, not in the life of Rob Reiner. And Michelle, who was his partner in everything, deserves to be remembered for more than just this tragedy. She was the one who encouraged him to take risks. She was the one who stood by him at every premiere and every protest. They were a team. Losing both of them at once leaves a massive hole in the Hollywood community. The 7 disturbing details we've covered, the brutal injuries, the lack of forced entry, Romy's terrifying discovery, the argument at the party, Nick's medical state, the suicide vest, and the harsh legal charges all point to a complex disaster. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment event. It was the tragic result of years of struggle with addiction and mental health. It shows that money and fame cannot protect you from these issues. The Reiners had the best doctors, the best rehab centers, and all the money in the world, but they couldn't save their son from himself, and ultimately, they couldn't save themselves from him. It is a stark reminder of how dangerous and destructive severe addiction can be. It tears families apart, and in this case, it destroyed one completely. As we look ahead to the next few weeks, more details will likely come out. We might hear more about what exactly was said at that party. We might learn what drugs, if any, were in Nick's system. We might hear from Nick himself if he decides to speak. But for now, we are left with the sadness of the facts we already have. A daughter running in fear from her childhood home. A son sitting in a cell in a safety vest. And two beloved icons gone forever. The final report is not just a piece of paper. It is the closing chapter of a life story that deserved a much better ending. The autopsy report gave us the physical facts, but the emotional truth is much harder to process. There is also a lesson here about the signs we miss. The argument at the party was public. People saw it. Did they think it was just a normal family squabble? Did anyone think, I should call someone? Probably not. We tend to mind our own business, especially with famous people. But in hindsight, that argument was a siren blaring in the night. It was the pressure cooker letting off steam before it exploded. If there is anything to take away from this, besides the grief, it is the importance of paying attention to those red flags. Mental health crises often have warning signs. The Reiners knew the signs better than anyone, and they still couldn't stop it. That is the most frightening part of all. The funeral arrangements have not been announced yet, but you can expect a massive gathering of Hollywood royalty. It will be a moment for the industry to come together and say goodbye. But it will also be a moment of great tension because the person responsible is not a stranger they can hate, but the son who grew up playing with their own children. How do you mourn the victims when the killer is also part of the family you love? That is the impossible question the Reiner family friends are facing right now. It is a situation with no good answers. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the tragic news of the last week, we are left with a heavy heart. Rob and Michelle Reiner are gone. The reports are out, and the details are as disturbing as we feared. The sharp force injuries listed on the death certificate are just words, but they represent a violent reality that has changed Hollywood forever. We will keep following this story as the court date approaches in January. We will see if Nick enters a plea and if more information comes out about that fateful night in Brentwood. But for now, the story is one of loss. A final report that no one ever wanted to read. The love story that changed when Harry met Sally ended not with old age and warm beds, but with a sudden, sharp tragedy, and that is the detail that hurts the most. The investigation is far from over. Police are still interviewing guests from the Conan O'Brien party. They are still piecing together Nick's movements on Sunday morning. Did he go straight to South LA? Did he stop anywhere else? The 7 details we discussed today are just the beginning of the truth. As the trial moves forward, we will likely hear about the specific dynamics in the house during those last days. Was there an ultimatum given? Did Rob and Michelle try to force Nick back into rehab? Did they cut him off financially? These are the kinds of triggers that often lead to domestic violence and addiction cases. The prosecutor, Nathan Hochman, has a tough job ahead. He has to prosecute a murder case that is also a family tragedy. He has to seek justice for Rob and Michelle while acknowledging the mental health crisis of the defendant. It is a balancing act that will play out on the national stage. In the end, the most disturbing detail of all isn't in the autopsy report or the police file. It's the realization that even the most loving, successful, and connected families are not immune to the devastation of mental illness and addiction. Rob Reiner spent his life making us laugh and cry with his stories. He taught us about life, and in his death, he is teaching us a hard lesson about the fragility of it all. The final report is in, and it is heartbreaking. We can only hope that Jake and Romy find some peace in the storm that is currently surrounding them. They are the survivors of this shipwreck, and the whole world is watching them with sympathy. The coming weeks will be full of legal battles and autopsies and headlines, but at the center of it are 2 children who miss their parents, and that is the only detail that really matters. The story of Rob and Michelle Reiner has ended, but the conversation about what happened to them is just beginning. We will be here to cover every new development as the truth continues to unfold in this devastating saga.